study.
Okay. Well, I'm just a farm boy that grew up in east central Indiana. And I think my fascination with International Harvester started when I was about 5 years old. And my father got a new farm all H. And I remember it sitting in the barnyard, and neighbors would stop by to look at it and just, talk about it and everything. And from that point on, I spent a lot of time riding with my father on the tractor as we would go out and do cultivation and so forth in the fields. And probably at about the age of 8 or 9, he let me drive the tractor by myself. And my emergency plan, if something went wrong, was to kick the switch in, because my foot wasn't long enough to reach the clutch and properly shove the clutch down. But I was just given kind of simple jobs, disking and things like that, where there wasn't a lot of stopping or hard turns to make. But my fascination with International Harvester continued, and I'd spend a lot of time with my father, and we raised beef cattle, so we had what I call full farming operations, because we'd have corn and beans and hay and everything to keep the livestock going. So we ended up having a combine and a baler and mower and many of the mounted attachments for the H. And eventually, in the early 50s, we got a second farm all H. And we took on more farming. I think we were farming about 300 acres at that time, and doing most all the work ourselves. We would do all the combining and baling and everything it took. And when I was about 13 or 14, I know I couldn't drive a vehicle on a road legally, but my father let me start doing custom work, and that's how I earned money to go to college. That and 4-H calves is my way of raising money. So many times I would work with the neighbors to schedule baling or combining, and Dad had a plan where I kept a third of the money. The other 2/3 went toward fuel and repairs and cost of operating the equipment. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. Dad was pretty much exclusive International Harvester. Even our pickup truck and our chest freezer was International Harvester. We had good dealerships in the area, and we just, stayed with International Harvester. So as years went on toward the late 50s, I know Dad would have liked to have seen me stay with farming, but the economy was not very good that time for farming. So I elected to go on to college, and I ended up going to Purdue and studying engineering. And when I got out of Purdue, I took a job at General Motors. But it just happened it was about 30 miles from where the farm was. So I would go back on weekends and maybe take a couple days of vacation from time to time to go back and help Dad farm. We were down to farming about 80 acres at that time. And this went on for several years. Dad's health got bad. He didn't like to be in the dust and so forth, so I would do the combining for him. And eventually it got to the point he couldn't farm, so he rented the farm out. And about this time I had found a farm all H that needed restored, and I bought it and drug it back to the farm, and I would go out on the weekends and work on his tractor to restore it. And while I was restoring this first one, I run across another one I thought what I'd use for parts. But as it turned out, I ended up restoring both of them. And I kept them for a few years there at the farm while Dad lived at the farm. The family was still on the farm. And then when they got to the point they needed to move in closer to the city, I had to find something to do with those tractors. And I ended up selling one of them, and the other one I gave to a children's museum there in Muncie, Indiana. And it's still at the museum. It's been there, I think, going on 35 years. And it's been one of the major attractions. It's a hands-on situation. My wife had talked to me. She was on the board of directors for the museum when it started, and they were looking for exhibits. And she knew I was toying with what to do with this tractor in order to find a place to store it. And I said, well, as long as I can help determine the destiny of it, us do it with the Children's Museum, so we donated it. And I always felt good about that. But then that was back in the early 70s when I got the tractors and then restored them, and in the early 80s I donated that one. And then about 10 years later, I run across another farm all H down by Richmond along the highway. And I went down to look at it, and it followed me home. So that started my next phase of life, is starting my collection of tractors. And I've collected 5 farm-alls now, everything from an H up through a 460. I've got 4 of them restored, and I've also got a collection of Cub Cadets, a couple red ones, and a couple of the Quiet Line series. So those are what I spend my free time playing with now, and enjoy it. So you might say I'm very dedicated to IH and enjoy the history, and it's been a good life for us. So thank you for listening.